All right, hello and good afternoon. My name's Stephen Morgan and I'm joined by Zach to present the Putting Online Experience at the Heart of Enrollment Marketing. Hello and welcome to our webinar.
Hey everybody.
So we're going to talk a bit today about how universities are driving enrollments by putting online experiences at the heart of their enrollment marketing. The agenda for today is I'm going to start by talking a bit about the new challenges facing enrollment marketers, and then move on to an interview with Zach, who's our resident expert today. And then the key takeaways, I'll sum up with those, and onto an audience Q&A. A bit about us, the presenters. My name's Stephen Morgan. I work with Squiz's customers in the US to deliver great digital outcomes. I've been doing this for about over 20 years now, and worked with universities in Australia, Europe, and now in the US. And I'm joined by Zach. Zach, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Zach. I'm the founder of Enrollify, which is a learning community for folks like you. And then I also head up growth at TD Agency, which is an agency that's dedicated to education marketing, really specializes in SEO, digital marketing, and all things inbound. So I get to spend a lot of time interviewing folks who are leaders in the space, interviewing, practitioners and ed tech founders, all to create content to provide more value to the industry. So that's a little bit about who I am and what I do.
Great, thanks, Zach, and welcome today. So first of all, just a little bit about Squiz and who we are. We sell and market the Squiz Experience Cloud. It's a digital experience platform made up of a number of components. For all the publishing and content needs is our content management platform, Matrix. That's backed up by a search and analytics stack called Funnelback, and that allows us to surface the right content at the right time to the right person. We then have Squiz Connect, which is an integration platform as a service for tying all of your front-end systems together to make sure you create a seamless experience, and a data store, which is our digital data service for storing customer data. We also have a couple of experience applications built on top of this for the higher ed space, which is Squiz Edify, which is a student portal, or student experience platform, and Squiz Workplace, which is an employee intranet. A selection of the universities we work with are on your screen now. We work with hundreds of them, of universities worldwide, in the US, Europe, and in Australia as well. See a selection of them there. We're recognized by leading analysts in our space, Gartner and Omdia. We've been ranked in the top 15, top 20 for the last over 7 years. The important thing about this is these are technology analysts that are looking at our digital experience platform and ranking it against the others. But we're the only vendor on these lists that specializes in US higher education. So you're getting a leading technology vendor who is a specialist in your industry and in your geography. So that's a little bit about Squiz. Onto the changing landscape for enrollment marketing. Enrollment marketing has always been a hard job. It's a challenge, and that's particularly for in a lot of the mid-market and universities that are fighting for higher enrollments. And the reason it's getting harder is long-term enrollment projections are actually, they reflect demographic trends. And over the next 5 or 6 years, there will be fewer 18-year-olds in the US. And geography matters most for 2-year colleges, but also for regional 4-year institutions. It's less so for the top ranked. By top rank, I mean the top 50. They're seeing enrollments increase, but for the rest of the universities, it is an increasing challenge due to demographics. This slide's very interesting. It's on the left, you'll see there, it's the changes in the number of all 18-year-olds nationwide. See, apart from the Northwest there, regions there, that it's declining in most of the US. And the second map in is the number of students between 2012 and 2029 who will attend a 2-year school. And you'll notice that the trends there, the increases and decreases across the country almost directly reflect the changes in the number of 18-year-olds entering college. The 4-year school is largely similar with a couple of notable exceptions like California, but again, reflecting most of the demographics. And then the only ones lucky enough to buck that trend are the top 50 institutions who will see enrollment increase nationwide. This interesting picture there that to some extent, we are beholden to some of the demographics happening and changes in our industry. And then put on top of that, COVID made it a little bit harder, especially with international enrollments. They dropped by almost half between fall of 2019 and 2020, a big gap to make up. COVID was the obvious cause, but it was already dropping since 2016. So that's just reflecting, it just intensified the trends. From NSCRC figures, we show that domestic enrollments dropped by about 600,000 students during COVID. And community colleges were the hardest hit, down by almost 10%. And public four-year universities were the least affected of those numbers. And as you all know, our prospective students now live online, and the enrollment journey has changed due to the increase in remote and hybrid learning. And with less on-campus time and experience to differentiate, digital is more important than ever. Universities being evaluated on the digital experience as well as the on-campus experience. And there's also a bunch of new opportunities that have come up thanks to things like micro-credentialing and build your own degree and things like that have become more and more prevalent with some of our customers and across the industry as a whole. But there are new opportunities opening up as a result of the digital revolution. And savvy marketers are finding ways to adapt and build a great student experience regardless. And I'm sure that can help us identify how they're doing that more with the coming into questions. Digital is critical for acquisition and retention. So high numbers, 90% of students surveyed by Technology One as a technology consulting organization in the HE sector. They've said they wanted a consistent digital experience, having online access to administrative information processes all in one place. And this was the surprising number for me. Over 40% of students said they would switch or consider switching university for a better experience with use of technology and higher levels of innovation. That is a large number in any industry, any service, having that number of students who would like to, who would be willing to switch to get a better experience is an astounding number. That's clearly very important. So what I'd like to do now is move on to our interview with Zach, who's, as I said before, who's founder and CEO of Enrollify. Welcome, Zach, once again, and we'll move on to the questions for you now.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited, and thank you for that crash course and setting the stage. It's super, super helpful.
Great, thanks. Okay. So what did enrollment marketing, in your experience, look like before COVID-19, Zach?
Well, in a classic consultant answer, I'll say it depends. And it depends on sort of, what your institutional context looked like at the time. But generally speaking, schools were doing digital marketing, right? Many schools are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases, millions of dollars on digital media campaigns, on inbound campaigns, et cetera. But I would say that there was still sort of this notion, right, that what was most important was getting students on campus. And if you could just get students to come to an on-campus event, right, an open house or an info session, then you could seal the deal, right? And then what COVID did, I think, which was probably like most hurtful for enrollment marketers, it totally washed out all of our events, right? And so schools that are used to, they know their numbers. They know, hey, if we can get students on campus, 50% of them will start an application. And of those 50%, another 50% will ultimately end up selecting our institution. Obviously, that varies depending on the school, but generally speaking, that's true. So, pre-COVID, schools were, most of their marketing spend was around events, right? Getting students to come to campus. Coupled with some probably 20-25% of budgets being spent on traditional sort of like digital advertising campaigns. Schools, depending again on where you fall, top 50 schools spending a fair amount on paid search campaigns. But what you didn't see pre-COVID was too much of an investment in SEO. Like SEO has been around, and thinking about what keywords your school is ranking for, how to think strategically about your content strategy, how to fix all the broken parts of your website to make sure that your technical SEO is strong. That really wasn't top of mind pre-COVID. Whereas now, and we can get into this in a second, I think it's very top of mind for most institutions. So to sum this up a little bit more, neatly, event marketing was the bread and butter of enrollment marketing pre-COVID. And now I think things are starting to shift ever so slowly. So I guess this next question around how did the best institutions handle the impact of COVID? I think what they did really, really well, the schools that decided, and actually we are just coming off of this podcast roadshow where we went all around New England and we talked with schools, students, faculty, administrators, et cetera, about what the impact of COVID has been like. And now that, schools are back, what, if anything, has changed? And one of the most surprising things in talking to these leaders was the schools that decided from the get-go that we're not going to try to just replicate our offline strategy online. Those were the schools that won. So some schools, right, they tried to take their event marketing strategy that would have worked well for an on-campus experience and turn it into something that worked well online. And they tried to have these big, Zoom webinars with lots of interaction and whatnot, and it just didn't really work. Whereas the schools that decided, let's reimagine the event experience. Let's couple asynchronous content with like dynamic, like edutainment type of content, et cetera. Those schools really, really won. The schools that decided that, hey, we're going to double down on our investment in video. We're going to double down on our investment in SEO. We're going to realize the fact that if we've got friction on our website, we got to get that friction out of here, right? Schools invested in chatbots, right? Schools invested in live chat. Schools really, for the very first time, I think, took a look at their site search, right? And said, is this working, right? Is this compelling enough to a 17-year-old? Is this easy, right? Or is our website really just kind of a digital brochure, right? And I think the schools that realize that no, the website, right, is now our best asset because we don't have the campus. Those are the schools that won.
Right. Yes, there's a couple of things there. So you're reimagining what an event is, like, so not just trying to reproduce the offline online. That makes a lot of sense. And then what about this whole concept of, like, you used to sort of build up to an event, do the big show, and then that was enough to fill your lead bucket and away, and then they moved to more of an ongoing conversation all the time. Is that in your experience?
No, totally. And I mean, again, we heard, so as part of what we do here in Enrollify, right, we have 4, 5, 6, soon to be 6 podcasts. And so we spend a lot of time interviewing folks, right? From small liberal arts schools, VPs of enrollment management, all the way to, presidents of major public institutions to, people that serve the industry, ed tech vendors, right, education consultants, et cetera. So we get a fairly sort of like diverse perspective on these things. And one of the things that I thought was particularly interesting about this moment was the schools that decided that our website, right, now needs to be our lead recruiter, right? The people that said, when people hit that website, it needs to feel like they're meeting our top admissions counselor, right? Or our director of admissions. And we need to craft language and pathways and content that feel conversational, that feel dynamic, right? That feel genuinely helpful. And that at the end of the day are personalized to what the user, the prospective student, actually cares about. And so for the schools, right, that they adopted this posture of like, no. We don't have the people on the road this year. We don't have our admissions counselors on the road this year. So how do we turn our website experience into something that simulates, right, that dynamic conversation? And that's a hard thing to do, a very hard thing to do. And it can be a very expensive thing to do, right, depending on sort of your context and the tech you have available. But the schools that have moved in that direction, right, and or have, fully, at least sort of like oriented themselves towards that direction, those are the institutions that are going to win in the long run.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess we've seen this play out in other industries, and even advanced industries like the e-commerce industry haven't got this right yet. So it's quite a journey. Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah. And what have you found are the most critical digital touch points for a prospective student as we make this shift away from the in-person to more digital interactions? What are the most critical points that you've seen?
Yeah, really, really good question here. So a couple things come to mind. Not everyone's going to agree with me on this, and that's totally fine. But I think one of the challenges with sort of where enrollment marketing is at right now, right? People have spend a lot of time going to conferences, reading content about sort of like why the student journey needs to be personalized, why you need to personalize your communications, why every Conflow needs to be personalized to the things that the student actually cares about. And personalization is incredibly important. Don't hear me wrong. But I think for some schools, right, and actually I would say probably the majority of Conflows, when I evaluate them, it's almost like we've taken personalization to an extreme, to the point where, you know, when you're a prospect and you're thinking about college, right, you're thinking about university, you're thinking about joining a community, right, of folks. Like you are going to leave your high school, you're going to leave your hometown, you're going to move to a community. And sometimes I think the communication sequences that are put out in a post inquiry or post app Conflow, what you end up doing, right, is you personalize too much to me that I don't even know, like, you know, who you are, right? Or like how am I going to fit into this greater context? Yes, you got the fact that I like soccer. Yes, you got the fact that, like, you know, I am interested in a business program, and all of my communications have like student athletes and, the pathways to an MBA post-grad, like baked into the Conflow. And that's all great. But wait, like, I want to join a community. So tell me a little bit more about that. And so I think to answer your question a little bit more directly here, the Conflow, right? And I use Conflow loosely. I'm not just talking about emails. I'm talking about texting, any sort of communication. I'm talking about your chatbots, right? And the conversational playbooks and flows that happen on your website. Any sort of experiential sort of like journey that folks walk through. It is incredibly important, yes, to personalize it to the prospect, but not at the cost, right, of making sure it's really clear what your product is, like what you're offering. It's almost like the brand of higher ed has been so bad at personalizing for, you know, years, and they've swung maybe a little bit too hard in some cases to the other side of the pendulum. And now they're like forgetting the fact that at the end of the day, they're still selling a product, and your product is your programs, your majors, and your experience. And if you don't do an effective job at communicating what that product is to sell me on that, it doesn't matter how many times you use personalization tokens or like a custom email banner, right? If it's not clear to me what it is that you have and what it is that you offer, at the end of the day, I'm not going to pick your institution. So the Conflow is incredibly important. I would also say the next most important thing is search. And I use that both in terms of organic search and site search. If folks can't find what they're looking for in a matter of seconds, right, it's too late. It doesn't matter that there's a story that I like to tell folks. I was sitting down with my 17-year-old brother, and it was Christmas, and we were trying to make a branded T-shirt, okay, for this for this little side hustle that we have going on. And I sat down with my brother Nick, and we're at my computer, and we're Googling, right? Like he's like, we're Googling how to get these custom T-shirts made. So we hit the first website that ranks number one. He clicks on that website. He immediately scrolls to the top of the navigation, and he's looking for like a search bar, and he doesn't see one. So he just hits back to the search results. Then he goes to the second result. He clicks on that. He sees a search bar. He clicks on that search bar, and he types the search query in. And it's your classic, like, Google site search. And it just pulls all these like confusing results. So he hits back. Then he gets the third result, which was for custom ink. He clicks on it. He goes to that the site nav. He types in a specific kind of T-shirt he was looking for, finds it instantly. And literally, like, he's like, that's what we're going to do. And I was so floored by this like experience and watching him navigate this site, watching him navigate these sites, and then realized he's not even thinking. Like, this is just intuitive. Like, if there's not a site search bar, he's not even going to stay on the site because he's too lazy to go through the navigation. And then if the site search returns something that's crappy, like, he's going to bounce back and find one that's good. So anyways,
right.
That's a long way.
Totally. Because that's the kind of, because as you say, you get the personalization going, you do your programs well, that's very important. But there's a couple of proof points, isn't there? It's like that moment where you type in what you're looking for and see if the brand promise actually is fulfilled in what you get back. Yeah. And then there's the cross-channel bit too, right? If you're getting different levels of personalization, different experiences on different channels, you don't even know it, but it's a red flag in your head because of the way you've been conditioned from people like Amazon. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, these kids are spoiled. Like, I mean, we're all spoiled as consumers, right? With how we navigate top search. sites with really, really compelling search. And to your point too, I think it's also about realizing that the way people search, right, is different than what you call your programs. Like a 17-year-old might not know the name of the major that you offer. They might have a general sense that they want to study business, but beyond that, they don't really know. They might not know what a bachelor's in business administration is or how that differs from a bachelor's in business analytics, right?
Yeah.
They're just going to Google business program or business major, right? Yeah. And then it's your job on your site, right, which is an environment you can control to ensure that you make it crystal clear, right? What are the different pathways that you can take here?
That you can follow. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks, Zach. Well, we kind of, I think we just covered on this one, didn't we? The personalization story. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, or move on to the next question?
Yeah, what I would add is I think that video is still incredibly under invested in as a tactic in enrollment marketing strategy. So like, I know higher ed talks a lot about video, and I think we've gotten better at producing sort of like really compelling like brand videos with nice like drone footage and all that jazz, and those videos are like compelling and awesome, and we should have more.
Love the drone footage on
allocated there. There's a lot of drone footage, yeah. But like video I'm still waiting for a school to have a video first approach to communications, and I haven't seen that. Like, we should be one-to-one video, right? Is the next frontier, right? Students want very quick access to information. And if they can consume an idea in 60 seconds from an admissions counselor, they will take that over having to read a 6-minute blog post or a 6-minute website page any day. So again, I think that this depends on sort of the part of the journey that we're looking at, but anytime, like from my opinion, post inquiry, right? Post a prospect raising their hand, saying that they're interested in your school's offerings, all the way to enrollment, video should be the heart of that communication strategy. Pre-inquiry, like you need to use other tactics for sure in conjunction with video. But once you've got my name and my email address, right? Like every email I receive should have a video in it, right? It should give me the option to schedule a chat with an admissions counselor through the little like Snapchat story, or an Instagram story like experience. Like, that's the future. So when it comes to personalization, what I wish schools were enabled to do a little bit more. And I think admissions folks and marketing folks want this more. And it ultimately is about like comes down to resources, but like figure out a way to make video the central communication channel, the central, communication type of your enrollment marketing strategy. And the schools that start thinking that way, you're not going to get everything, right? You're not going to get everything overnight, and that's totally okay. But like, it's about mindset. And I think that needs to be the mindset of most enrollment marketers today.
Great. Yeah, it's also because you've got the traditional degrees, and as we saw on those slides before, the demographics are working against us a little bit there, in that you're fighting for the same share or a bigger share of a shrinking pie with that. But with the newer concepts such as micro-credentialing, such as some of the professional development programs and things, people might not know what it's called, what they're looking for, right? So video explanations and one-to-one communication is critical for that type of, if you're trying to open up a new market.
Yeah, I mean, and a quick last point on that too is like, if you're ever wondering, like as a school, what marketing strategies are actually going to work for this audience of students, especially to your point, if you're going after sort of like a non-traditional, student, go look at like the Lambda schools, like go look at the coding boot camps, right? And look at how they market, like watch what they do, right? This idea, like we just got back from this tour. We were asking students from New England universities what they think about the future of higher education. And, one of the questions that we asked students, which was so interesting, was like, do you have any friends who are not going to college, right? Or not, in a traditional sort of like university? And if so, like, what are they doing? And what was shocking to us was that every single student that we talked to had friends that had opted in for a non-traditional path towards advanced education, being a coding boot camp, being a Lambda school, right? Being some sort of other non-traditional pathway, which I think, right, is just a testament to sort of like the reality that, opportunities that are boot camp focused or income share agreements that like Lambda schools offer, those things are not as taboo as they were even like 5 years ago. Like culturally, those are being accepted. And so anyways, not to, scare us even more here, but the point I'm trying to make is if you're ever wondering what's going to work and what doesn't work with a 17-year-old, go look at what these other schools are doing, right? These other vehicles for education are doing, because they're onto something and it's working.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and having a lot of success with it. Yeah, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what marketing tech are you seeing as mission critical? I mean, it's so much, such a daunting landscape nowadays.
Yes.
Like the bits. So when you're coming into a program, you're looking at it. Like what are the sort of core building blocks are you looking for?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of CRMs in higher ed claim to also be marketing attribution systems, and in my humble opinion, they're not. I think there are some that are trying to get there. Like Element 451 is probably like the best example of this. But like Slate is, a CRM that many schools use, right? And Slate is a very powerful, what I would call admissions CRM. It's fantastic, right, for admissions. It is not a marketing attribution platform. And so the problem is for most schools, right, marketing gets a lot of the marketing spend, right? Admissions typically has a smaller budget, right? And so when marketing is spending all of this money on digital campaigns, on SEO campaigns, on billboards, whatever the heck marketing is doing, they're funneling all these like top of the funnel leads to admissions. And then admissions has no real way, like you can't map the whole student journey from like initial touch point through enrollment. And even if you can, like you're always kind of left wondering, did the student actually come from here? Or like, okay, I know that this was their first touch point, but is this what ultimately convinced them to like convert? And you and I know, Steve, that we're living in a multi-attribution sort of world, right? Lots of people, lots of touch points deserve credit for an enrolled student. It isn't just one touch point. It isn't just that, initial, source or that last converting source, right? Everything matters along the way. And so the problem is marketing might be over here running these campaigns. They're dumping them into some sort of like, general Slate inquiry form that then they're being enrolled in Slate or whatever the CRM that a school is using is. But that marriage, you don't see. Like there are key data points that are just totally lost. So to answer your question very directly, I think every school needs a marketing attribution system in conjunction with their CRM. The two have to be synced up, but they are not the same. So for example, this is just one, but for example, like what HubSpot brings to the table of enabling, right, folks to build out lots of content, right, off of subdomains of the school's website to, understand sort of like what actual keywords your school is ranking for and where you have opportunity to grow in your organic rankings, et cetera. All of that data synced with your CRM, like you need to, the future, right, is that, Steve, you go in and you type in something like, marketing jobs or whatever it is, or like a bachelor's in marketing. And you're able to see like every student, right, in your sort of pipeline that is currently interested in or looking at pages or terms or emails related to that particular topic. And I think that's the big missing gap in higher ed technology right now, is that these systems exist, but they're oftentimes very disjointed, and or admissions believes that what their core admissions CRM is offers enough, and they don't really need to care about marketing attribution. But as budgets are consolidated, and as these teams are working, more in tandem than ever before, I think marketing attribution and having systems that really tell folks the full picture of a student's journey to enrollment, that is going to be more important than ever before.
Got you. Right. Yeah, no, we see an adjunct to that as well. Like, so you've got the marketing attribution, very important, I agree. And then also like, you're talking about the systems of record there, like your CRM and things like that. But there's bits that you There's bits that you find out about someone along the way, or they share with you as an institution, and you want to save that somewhere as well. You know, it might not belong back in a system of record, but you want to know that about the person for future interactions. And so, yeah, we provide, and a lot of vendors provide, some way of storing that data. So it sits alongside what you've got in your system of record and provides the softer side and improves that personalization experience as you go.
Yeah. Totally. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So what data do you think institutions rely on to continually optimize their enrollment marketing? Where is this data, and what attributes are they looking at, do you find, in best practice?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that this is a hard question because it varies so dramatically depending on institutional context and tools and whatnot. What I'll just say is that I think that I'm encouraged by the fact that marketing and admissions teams are working more closely together than ever before, right? So you've got data sharing happening in more real time. We're actually starting to see sort of like job titles like enrollment marketer, right, pop up. And you know, somebody who is an enrollment marketer, like at an institution, is typically reporting to admissions, but there's sort of like this liaison between admissions and marketing, which is really, really exciting to hear. Because again, in most institutions, marketing and communications, their scope of work, their breadth, right, is much greater than just admissions, right? They're serving advancement, they're serving lots of student services, like they're serving lots of different departments at a college or university. And so, you know, admissions is a very, very important one, right? Like sales is very important to any operation. And so what's cool to see is we're seeing innovative approaches to like, how do we bridge that gap? We're seeing people get hired again into admissions, but they're not actually processing applications. They're not actually on the road as an admissions counselor. Their job is to be like the marketer for admissions and serve as sort of like a liaison to marketing and communications. So I think that sort of progress is breaking down, you know, silos, like literally breaking down these silos, is very, very encouraging and needs to keep happening. I would also say that what schools need to start thinking about, right, and being very honest with themselves about is what is the cost per acquisition of a new student, right? Like let's get, and what is the cost per acquisition of a new student by program? This is especially important at the graduate level, less so at the undergraduate level, but like still very important to understand. And then, right, cost per acquisition of a student by channel, right? Like, and that's where you have to get really, really nitty gritty and specific. And, you know, the good news is like these tools, they exist, right? They are out there. You can calculate this stuff. This isn't very, very hard. It's, you know, you got to have the system in place. But then what is hard is figuring out, oh God, wow, we dropped $250,000 on that campaign and we yielded one student, you know, that's dramatic. But like,
let's not do that again.
but like, that's the thing is like, until very recently, and I still think, you know, that this is happening, is that, you know, enrollment teams haven't been empowered with this concrete data to really know, right? But now, right, we have the tech, right? We have the software. You can really know. Now you can decide, right? Well, you know what? That billboard, the purpose of it, there's no bearing on enrollment. It's purely brand, and we don't care. We're going to keep spending $250,000 on that billboard. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But, right, the problem is right now, for many schools, they're still struggling when it comes to enrollment. They feel under-resourced. They don't have millions of dollars to blow on tests, right? They might have an annual budget of $100,000 or $500,000. And they have to be strategic with that spend. Like there's no other option. And so for schools that are outside of that top 50 that you mentioned earlier, in particular, like every dollar matters. And you better, you know, be sure that the dollar that you're putting here or the dollar that you're putting there is actually the most sustainable place to put that dollar.
Yes, right. Yeah. And delivers lasting benefits sometimes as well. How does it impact year after year? Okay. And in this is a very broad question, but the future of enrollment marketing, obviously we talked about some of the demographic trends, we talked about some of the technology changes. What does this all impact? Is it, where do you see the most advancement over the coming years? Is it in personalization? Is it in video? We've touched on, like, is that the general area?
I think yes, but a couple of additional things I would just add. Number one is, and this is a little bit broader, right? This is like the future of higher education, higher education a little bit here. But like, I think schools outside of, the top 25, the top 50 maybe, and even them eventually, but I think they're going to have to be brutally honest with themselves about what is their unique value proposition and what kind of student populations are they actually going to go after. So the hard thing about higher education, right, is that as an industry, like we are an inclusive space, right? Like one of the most beautiful things about walking through a college campus is seeing this like incredible diversity of skill set, of culture, right, et cetera. And I think that that's a very beautiful thing. And I really hope that doesn't go away. However, what I think some schools are going to need to do is some schools are going to have to get really, really honest with themselves about, okay, what are the student populations that do perform best here that our programs can help the most get jobs after graduation? And these other student populations, we love them. We want them here as well. They're welcome here. But in terms of our marketing spend, in terms of our admissions and recruitment strategy, these are the populations that we're going to go after, because we've identified that what we can offer as an institution best fits the needs of these particular students. So I think that will have a huge bearing on enrollment marketing, because you're going to be seeing less of this like wide kind of spray and pray approach to marketing. And you're going to see people go very deep into one population, a couple populations and some channels. That's number one. And then number two is, I think that schools that are not investing heavily in becoming media companies, essentially like media production companies for the specific purpose of marketing and recruitment, are making the biggest mistake. The future is content. Content is not new. If you are not out there, and it's not about taking an omni-channel approach, it's about creating really great, compelling content. It looks like hiring almost like an in-house, student recruitment team that is dedicated to creating top, caliber TikTok videos, right? Like it's going to look like you investing heavily in podcasting, in videos and whatnot, because the reality of the situation is that search is going to get more competitive. Schools aren't going to be able to keep dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on paid search campaigns. Organic is going to matter more than ever before. And if schools don't start investing in that aggressively right now, right? And I would say that this is the step two after that step one of really identifying, right, who your target audiences are. If you don't do that, I don't see how any sort of like monumental shift is going to happen for you as an institution. It's going to be a steady decline otherwise, which is hard. And maybe that's, the path that folks want to take. But I think for the schools that care a lot about growth, and I think that there are a lot of them that exist outside of that top 50, they have to be brutally honest with themselves that like, we cannot afford to be all things to all people, but we can be the best to some people. And how do we focus on that and create a plethora of really good content that is incorporated into our enrollment marketing strategy that speaks to those populations?
Yeah, right. It's interesting. Yeah. And that first point you brought up there, Zach, about tying back, who do you retain and get to complete their degree successfully, and tying that feedback loop back into the beginning. I think that's really powerful and could lead to much better communications up front.
Yeah, I mean, and last thing on that front too is like, higher ed has a little bit of a branding problem right now, right? Which is that like, there's questions about the ROI of a bachelor's degree, right? And so to your point, like if we can make that tie, right? If we can say, oh wow, like of the people that we graduated, where are they working? Like what are they doing? And how much money are they making? How successful are they in their career? And if we can tie that back to sort of like, where did those folks come from? Oh, interesting. Like this person came from these kinds of campaigns. And then you can start drawing sort of these connection points of like, wow, like for our audience, it's really important that we invest here, because if we invest here, we'll get more students, like Zach, at our school. And we know that if we get more students like Zach at our school, they'll graduate well, they'll get good jobs, and we can, they'll be ambassadors of our institution. They might even, become donors, right? One day of our institution, et cetera. So yeah, that's super, super important because it's the only way that we can move the needle on a more sustainable process, a more sustainable approach to enrollment marketing.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's interesting. And look, yeah, and for every student that lasts the full 4 years, if it's a 4-year institution, then that's that's you're getting additional years out of the same number of admissions as well. So
absolutely.
Important. Yeah. Thanks, Zach. Okay. Oops. Sorry, move on to some key takeaways from that conversation. Thank you very much for that, Zach. It was very interesting.
Yeah, of course.
Interview. Yeah. So key takeaways for me anyway from the conversations we've been having today and prior to this too. So certainly prioritizing your student digital experience is really, really important as you recruit and enroll students at your university. Over half of this is a survey completed by DIS Research not so long ago. And over half of students reported that of all the companies or entities they engage with, their AG institution is furthest behind in personalizing their experience. So their expectations are being set by various other institutions they're interacting with, and they're finding their higher ed institution is furthest behind. And a stunning 80% of them said they'd be more satisfied with their university life if their institution had a single way of communicating with them, like a single platform, a common narrative that spanned their interactions with the university. Because typically students are logging into upwards of 10 to 12 systems to complete their interactions with the school. And then back to that stunning number that we mentioned right up front, over 40% of students would switch or consider switching if the technology experience was better and there was higher levels of innovation at a similar university. So it's a big switching cost there too. And it needs to be personalized. Over half of students expected it to always be personalized. 2/3 say that their expectations of personalization are not being met, like the institution doesn't understand who they are and what they're after, and maybe doesn't listen to them over time. It's a common problem that we see, collecting information and then it's sort of slipping through the cracks. But don't overcomplicate it. You can start with very low risk, high reward areas of your digital experience to personalize. Something like search personalization to targeted groups is a very simple thing to set up. It's a way of winning your feet, and you can get started on that without overhauling your entire platform. So back to Zach's point before, budgets are tight and you need to be getting the most from every dollar. And so starting with something that's small, high impact and quite easy to do is often a great route to take. So they're the key lessons from that I've taken away from today's interview. And thank you again, Zach. But I'd like to hand over to you now for some Q&A and we'd be happy to answer your questions. So please fire away.